U.S. Army serial number 515-60977.
Hi, I'm Richard Schwartz.
And I'm Otto Kunz.
Marty was a longtime member and a dear friend and confidant to an awful lot of us in the organization known as Mensa. Our kids thought of him as Uncle Marty, and we thought of him as our Marty. I'll bet we're not alone in that. Looking around this room, actually I can't see around the room, the lights are kind of bright. But I looked around the room earlier, and I suspect that many people in the groups here, the various groups, thought of him as their Marty too. There's a reason for that. And since Mensa is supposed to be an intellectual organization, I guess it's fitting for me to point out that there's a name for that reason, and that name is empathic intelligence. That's the sort of thing that big company CEOs and politicians have in abundance. And Marty was in that same kind of league. But his empathic intelligence was so much more pure. In another life, he could have been a great yogi. And I'm not talking about the bear or the Bera, though I think Marty might have been happy in either of those roles as well. He wasn't a superstar ball player or a cartoon smarter than your average bear, but Marty was a superstar teacher about life and friendship, and he had a true superpower. He had the uncanny ability to make whomever he was talking to feel like they were the most important person in the room right at that moment. He was so good at it that he barely had to say anything. He could do it with a simple, "Hey, you," from across the room, or "Hey, you," up close, and the hug was a bonus. He could make you feel like you were the most important person in the world because at that moment he made you the most important person in his world.
Sure did. I first met Marty at a Mensa gathering here in New Hampshire more than 20 years ago. I think it was about 25 years ago. He was there with his children, Cami and Nick, who were then somewhere around 11 and 9, respectively. Kid 1 and Kid A, he'd call them, or, among other things, Kid 2, Kid B, hey, you. But his idea was, he was making it clear that they were both the most important kid in the world. Equal in his love, equal in his pride, equal in his trust. Marty's style of parenting with these two amazing kids was an inspiration to my wife Karen and me, and I know for sure that he inspired many other young couples who were thinking about starting families. And once we had them, he loved our families too. More than a few years ago, Marty had a knee replacement, one of his knee replacements. One of my younger son, Peter's, earliest memories of Marty was his conversation with him about the surgery. Peter was probably 5 or 6 when he asked what had happened to Marty's knee, and Marty replied that his knee was in a jar. And Peter looked at him and said, "Do you mean your patella?" And Marty responded, "You must be a Mensan." His joyous laugh could be heard throughout the house. Marty was quick with a hearty laugh or with a story, but even quicker with an offer of help. He was a tireless volunteer. And that was true whether it was just a matter of refilling the bowls of M&Ms and chips at a weekend party or making gazpacho for 1,500 of his closest friends, which he actually did in 1994. Marty would say to whomever was running things, "Put me in, coach," because he was always ready to play. As must now be very clear, we quickly developed a deep and abiding affinity for this remarkable man. He gave us hope, and beyond hope, confidence that we could succeed and that we could truly have it all: family, friends, and career. There would be sacrifices, but as it turns out, he was right.
I met Marty at the very first gathering of Mensans that I ever attended. Little did I know it, but one of the ways Marty was pitching in that day was just by being Marty. As I made my way around the rooms of the center of New Hampshire, tentatively, trying to decide if this was really the kind of group of people I wanted to be part of, Marty was the very first to talk to me. And he just asked me, "Are you having fun?" Which caught me a bit off guard. And he saw that, so he turned on that superpower of his. And we were talking, and he quickly put me at ease. There I was, amongst strangers, some stranger than others, I might add, trying to decide whether it was even worth coming back for the next day's activities. And there he was, this big, friendly guy who just wanted to make sure that I was having fun. And we talked, and with his warmth and his enthusiasm, he made me want to come back. And I did come back, and at dinner the next night, he was still there making sure that I had fun and that I met people. And one of the people that I met convinced me to show up at another event, where I met someone who convinced me to show up at yet another. And that's where I met my wife, Beth, who we were married a couple of years later. So it's fair to put Marty right at the beginning of the chain to the sequence of events that really did lead to me having it all.
Our friendship was a treasure to me, as it was to all of us, and we've heard that many times already today, and probably many more are yet to come. One of the many interests that we shared was baseball. I love the game. One day back in the mid-1990s, our friend Tom Thomas, Marty, and I were playing catch in the street, literally playing in traffic. At one point, the ball came back to me from Marty much faster than I expected, and he shouted, "Cookie Rojas!" I soon came to learn that Marty was teaching me a technique, trapping the ball on the back of the glove to reduce the transfer time so you could throw on to the next base quickly. It was a very neat trick. It made a big difference to me and inspired me to keep working on my game as I struggled to earn my keep on the local softball team. Wound up playing into my late 40s, actually, thanks to Marty. Marty also loved a bargain. Some of you might know this about him. Frankly, there were some times when he had little choice about that, but there's no better bargain in baseball than minor league games. And to top that off, they often run great promotions. We went to a game in Pawtucket one particular day in 2003, and the promotion was for free French fries at McDonald's, but only if the Paw Sox pitchers recorded 9 or more strikeouts. Going into the bottom of the ninth, young Boston pitching prospect named Bronson Arroyo had recorded 7 strikeouts. More importantly, for baseball fans, he was 3 outs away from throwing a perfect game, the most rare achievement a pitcher can have. We were all holding our breath. The first batter in the ninth struck out on 3 pitches. The crowd goes wild, 2 outs away. The second batter took 2 strikes, then a ball, and then a strike. 2 down, 1 more out to go. Everyone's on the edge of their seats except Marty. He's already jumping up and down saying, "Yay, free French fries." There's Marty. The next batter bounced out 3-1, and Bronson Arroyo had his first and thus far only perfect game. Marty was happy about seeing that most rare feat too, but all the more so because we had won free French fries. Marty's message came through loud and clear. Celebrate every victory.
So today, we do celebrate the victory of having known Marty. And it's completely right that we celebrate, because the most important person in the room today, for once, is that guy in our memories, which comes around full circle. The most important person in the room is all of us with those memories, which is exactly the way Marty would have it. There are so many things we remember: his hugs, his humor, his philosophy of life and love. And we could go on, but there's too much. So we'll sum up with the top 10 things we learned from Martin J. Capodice.
Number 10, jicama is an economical and versatile root vegetable.
Number 9, there is no such thing as a bad hug.
Number 8, make sure there is no other food in the house when you introduce your children to the virtues of jicama.
Number 7, regaining happiness after you become miserable is a lot harder than staying happy in the first place.
Number 6, love people for who they are, not for who you want them to be.
Number 5, tell the people you love that you love them.
Number 4, and especially tell your children you love them at least once a day.
Number 3, when in doubt, give a hug.
Number 2, the same rules for jicama also apply to quinoa.
And the number 1 thing we learned from Marty?
Yay!
Free French fries!
I did this so I could be Marty's height. My name's Nancy Gerzon, and Marty and I were friends for many years. Shortly after Marty and I met, we discovered that we both love to cook for crowds. We volunteered to make dinner for the traveling cast of Godspell. They were sadly performing at the Palace Theater, but this was before the Capitol Center for the Arts came about. And for this, our first cooking adventure, Marty decided that he was going to do the shopping before he came to our house. He arrived with the following: 4 heads of cabbage, 20 pounds of sweet potatoes, 6 bulbs of garlic, a gallon of extra virgin olive oil, as if I had none, 7 heads of romaine lettuce, 10 pounds of russet potatoes, 3 loaves of French bread, a dozen eggs, and his huge stoneware bowl. He somehow managed to bring all of those ingredients up the stairs in one trip. That shouldn't have surprised me. His arms were meant for carrying boundless amounts of anything. But what did surprise me was the extent to which these ingredients were teeming out of his bowl. It was the biggest kitchen bowl I'd ever seen. In my small kitchen, there was hardly room for all 3 of us, him, me, and the bowl. The bowl so sizable, it took up the entire center island. We emptied her contents, we chopped, we ground, we pulsed, we pulverized, we mashed all day, and we filled that bowl up again with his not yet signature dish, Mary Urina's Yugoslavian slaw. Cabbage softened by warm potato, each shredded leaf touched with just the right amount of garlic and salt. We served the cast of 45 sweet potato soup, Caesar salad with homemade, of course, garlic croutons, and the slaw. We brought it into this table full of hungry actors and actresses, and one of the dancers came up to the table. She leaned into the bowl of slaw and she said, "This is delectable. It smells like my kitchen, full of drama." She leaned out, she sighed. "This smells like love." As we were walking out of the theater, the house manager, Marty did not yet know that he was going to be a house manager for so many years later, ran up to us and said, "That was the best volunteer meal we have had here." And Marty smiled, stood up proud, looked him right in the eye, and said, "That's my job." In those rootless days between children and a new marriage, Marty and that bowl were everywhere. Countless weekends, they just showed up at my house, and when they did, we would come up with any random reason to cook for a crowd. We cooked for Mensa events, family gatherings, milestones, holidays, birthdays, work parties, families in need, and once in a while, just for us. Marty taught me to be bold in the kitchen. He taught me that there can never be enough garlic. And he taught me mostly to trust in my senses and to let go of things I relied on, like timers and recipes. I'm sure I taught him things, but I know in my heart, and to use one of his favorite phrases, I know that the benefit from our time was way, 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 way more than half mine. Marty, more than any other person I've ever met, was ready and eager to help. It was essentially his way just to show up, always with a smile and often with the tools he thought I needed to do the job. There were innumerable ways that he tried to help others, and though I can't actually see the house, I'm going to ask you to raise your hands and look around the room and see if any of you were one of those people who Marty just showed up to help. I know some of you are here, people who moved, people who had needs to go to doctors, keep raising your hands, or just when he wanted to be there for you. It was an extraordinary gift that he had, and I imagine, as your experience was similar to mine, that when he showed up, it really was a lot of fun. So there are unexpected moments that sort of call to mind as we reflect on these times with Marty, but my very favorite with him was on one particular day when he and his bull showed up for a party Len and I were doing. Marty and I decided to go out and buy our ingredients at the market, and so he was full of stories about food, as we heard about the jicama, although we did not serve jicama on this day, that he decided right there in the produce aisle of the supermarket that he was going to teach me how to pick out fruits and vegetables. So calling on a lifetime of experience as the son and later owner of a wholesale produce business, he put his hands over my eyes. He wouldn't let me peek, and I couldn't peek out of those huge hands. Wouldn't let me peek, and he made me, right there in the produce aisle, hold the weights of melons so I could determine how much water weight was in them and which one would be juicier, or sniffing the bottoms of pineapples so he could tell me exactly how many days they were until they ripened. People laughed at us. But it was the best gift of my life. I actually know how to rub a peach to determine where hidden bruises lurk, and the sound you make when an apple gets tapped and it's absolutely perfectly ripe. We brought home bags of produce, perfect produce, chopped it up and put it into a stoneware bowl. Summer's perfect nurturing bounty there for our party. Many years later, on a sun-drenched counter overlooking the sea, his bowl is perched, awaiting its morning routine. It's 5:30 a.m. Marty can be found dancing in the kitchen, barefoot. He picks up his bowl of rising dough. He carefully puts it into loaves, and he sets it in the oven to bake. We're together for a week with about a dozen friends for a seaside holiday full of everything Marty loved: laughter, bicycling, sea kayaking, music, and fantastic food. Everyone pitches in this week, but Marty, as always, takes on way more, and he cheerfully and happily tends to feeding us every morning at breakfast, making his famous breads for this crowd. My dog Noodle and I come in and we dance with him for a bit. And he repeatedly, rather than my getting to say thank you to him for all this he's doing, he repeatedly thanks me for this glorious time he's having. He says over and over again, over many years, the best week of his life. And he gets back to the business of baking bread. He has multiple bowls in service. He's delighting our friends with multiple choices every morning: French, potato rolls, sourdough, and his signature and famous oatmeal molasses. That morning, he stands in the doorway, his tall left arm reaching up and holding onto the door jamb, leaning in and surveying our friends, eating this delicious bread. Our friend Sabine takes her fork and presses it hard into her plate to make sure that she gets every last crumb, and when she realizes there's no more crumbs for her to eat, she jumps up vertically and runs to the sideboard and just desperate to get more. And Marty stands at the doorway, leaning into his weight, smiling. Another friend walks over and asks him why he does it. She worries that he's doing more than his fair share. She says to him, "We can go to a bakery. We can get fresh bread, and then you can sleep in." Marty looks horrified. "Pshaw," he says. I laugh at his choice of words, always the man with the perfect word. And he smiles at me. It's a really knowing smile, like a secret's underneath it. "Pshaw," he says. "That's my job." I'm sure she misunderstands him. I'm sure our friend thinks that "that's my job" means I'm obliged to. I have to help. But after years of friendship, it dawns on me in this moment that that's really not it at all. For Marty, "that's my job" means I want to, because it brings me joy. And I realize how lucky we are to have a friend like Marty, who really is kind of a hedonist at heart, derives such deep satisfaction from inspiring happiness in others. A few months before Marty died, on the night that he was told that the clinical trials had to be stopped because the cancer had spread too far, my husband Len and I sat with him. We asked him to tell us what was most important, what legacy he wants to be sure we carry on. His answers were, not surprisingly, about the people he loved and about how much he wants them to stay connected. But I noticed over the next few weeks a significant shift in what we spoke about. I noticed for the first time that instead of saying, "That's my job," he started saying, "That's your job." His bowl sits empty now at Rumford Street, ready for the next gathering, her interior tinged yellow from years of molasses and cornmeal. And looking at her, I can see the puffs of flour in the air and taste the bread's sweetness. And I imagine that everyone in this room knows their job, the job that you all take to carry on Marty's legacy, a job inspired as only Marty can inspire out of the things that you shared with each other, which were probably unique to everyone in the room. So today it's my job, as Marty asked of me, to follow in his footsteps, help bring people together, keep his connections strong, and inspire others. Tomorrow, I have other jobs. I'll dance in the kitchen. I'll cook for a crowd. I'll be highly unsparing with garlic. I'll bring the bowl. I'll do more than my share. I'll show up. And I hope that when you see me do these things, I'll do them with a smile, and you'll know what I mean when I say, it's my job.
Four-sixths of us. Four-sixths. One flank just gave birth 3 days ago?
Something like that.
Something like that. So, yeah.
I'll go ahead and say something really quick about why we're here. It's not just because Nick has the connections to get us a show at this very beautiful theater, but because we had a band in New York for about a decade or so, and over the span of those years, Marty came dozens of times to come see us. And I don't know about you guys, but there aren't a lot of bands I would drive 5 or 6 hours to go see in a small, crowded Brooklyn bar, play for 40 minutes, and then turn around and come home. But he did that, so we would be remiss after him coming to that many of our gigs not to come to his. So that's why we're here.
Worked by the rain, driven by the snow. I'm drunk and dirty, don't you know I'm still Willin. Out on the road, late at night, I seen my pretty Alice, never had like Alice. Dallas Alice. And I've been from Tucson to Tucumcari to Hatchapeta to Tonopah, driven every kind of rig that's ever been made. Driven on the back road so I wouldn't get way. And if you give me wheat, white sand wine, and you show me a sign, I'll be willing. Kicked by the wind, robbed by the sleep, had my head stove in, but I'm still on my feet and I'm still willing. Smuggled some smokes and folks from Mexico, baked by the sun every time I go to Mexico. And I'm still, and I've been from Tucson to Tucumcari, Hatchapeta to Tonopah, driven every kind of rig that's ever been made. Driven on the back road so I wouldn't get way. And if you give me wheat, white sand wine, and you show me a sign, I'll be willing.
Dad had a lot of favorite flank songs, and we're not playing his favorite flank song because that one's too hard, and it requires a lot of banjo picking. And Tom, as you know, hasn't played the banjo in a while, but you know, this one's a little more appropriate for the day. And if you know the words, feel free to sing along.
I lost my life insurance when I got fleeced, playing Omaha High with the chief police, huffing and puffing, blowing hot and cold. I went all in when it was time to fold. Now I ain't got a cent, dead or alive, and the fuzz always giving me an evil eye, but a good time was had by all. Well, the lady I gave a diamond ring, she got very good aim when you're throwing things. When you set yourself on fire, Lord, it takes a fool. Wonder why it is you gone and lost your cool. She got a man by day, a man by night. You know that's a sure way to start a fight, but a good time was had by all. Well, a good time was had by all. Would you attest it's true as best as you recall? Worst things you will agree, before better men than we, but a good time was had by all. Well, it's carrying on a stick, load a hamster on a wheel. You go straight, you go around. It's the same shady deal. You got a hole in your pocket, baby, you won't mend it. Money ain't worth nothing till you spend it, and you ain't got a damn thing left to sell. Put your powder it would take to blow it all to hell. A good time was had by all. Well, a good time was had by all. Your each duress was well addressed, as I recall. Worst things you will agree, before better men than we, but a good time was had by all. Tickets to the bridge. Good luck, everyone. lady. Your little lady, your little lady. Your little lady, your little lady. Well, old habits die hard unless they kill you first, Lord. Yesterday's blessing is tomorrow's curse. Sons of Adam, daughters of Eve, you gotta leave what you take when to take that leave, and just make a hurly-burly at the pearly gates. Go on and pull that surly face, but a good time was had by all. Everybody in the chub, well, a good time was had by all. No protest was cried as best as I recall.